Hello there guys, welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Hope you're doing really well on this Wednesday. As promised, this is going to be a comment show where I look at some of your recent comments, your thoughts and feelings in response to what I've had to say or just your own thoughts about Chelsea and recent topics, and we delve into them and respond to them. Please like, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, please subscribe to the pod and give us a positive rate and review. But let's jump into your comments straight away here. From Chris 2K Great says Santos wants a regular starting spot. He doesn't want to be a rotational option. The problem is that Caicedo, Lavia and Enzo also don't want to be rotational options. Chelsea can't keep all these players as they are all starters, not depth players. We have to choose. I think in response to kind of the future of Chelsea's midfield, or especially the immediate future heading into the Club World Cup and next season, I understand in some case, like there probably isn't enough spots to go around in the current first team when you add Andrey Santos onto that group. However, you are kind of inferring and kind of expecting then that those players are going to remain fit for the majority of the season. And naturally nowadays you do need a bulkier squad because of the nature of the fixture list and it being so congested. And I think the interesting, unique quirk of Chelsea's summer this year is the Club World Cup. We have absolutely no idea how that is going to impact the fatigue, the strength, the kind of the injuries and fitness of the team heading into next season, where it's likely going to be a very small pre-season, may not even go outside the UK or Europe in that pre-season, and straight back into the Premier League, where Chelsea will have some form of European football. If it's the Champions League, obviously that brings extra strain. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you need a bigger squad, and I don't think that Chelsea are in a bad place by having Andrey Santos and stronger options. I actually think the issue this season has been the lack of midfield quality, midfield depth options. Many people have brought this up. I was speaking about this as far back as the summer transfer window, literally the first few games of the season, that being a problem. And that was even when I think Lavia was fit, or maybe was about to get injured again. Losing Conor Gallagher, I thought that was a negative. Kieran Dewsbury-Hall has not been that for Chelsea. I didn't think he was ever going to be that for Chelsea, of like a real quality, elite, caliber player. And sure, Santos, I think we spoke about this last week. Like, Santos will want some assurance that he's coming back to Chelsea. He's going to get a chance to play in the first team. Enzo Fernandez, there's been not really rumours, but people talking about, is he going to go Real Madrid? I saw a report from Jacob Steinberg in The Guardian today that Chelsea are flatly refusing that. We will see over the course of the summer. I don't think the Real Madrid Enzo Fernandez thing is going away, but I'd be quite disappointed if he didn't stay at Chelsea this summer, because I think actually Enzo Fernandez has had a positive season at Stamford Bridge, and I'd like to see him only continue. And what a midfield with Caicedo, with Lavia, with Enzo, with Santos, how all these players could impact and make Chelsea's options better. So I don't think it's like the end of the world that Santos might not play every single week, or the sense that like he's going to have to compete for minutes. I think he understands that probably himself. I just think it makes Chelsea's depth options better, and probably also lessens the strain on certain players. I think Enzo and Caicedo have been kind of run into the ground this season, and to their credit, especially Caicedo's credit, it hasn't looked like it. They've still been performing, especially Caicedo at an elite level. But I think Santos brings that hopefully dimension of especially more attacking, more physical kind of dominance in central midfield, the ability to cover ground quicker, which I think has been an issue, and maybe elevates a player like Enzo Fernandez. So again, I see it as a positive. I don't see it as a concern. I think those players can all work together and Chelsea can make it work over the course of the season. Time Lord Victorious, I've got to say this is one of my favourite usernames as a fellow Doctor Who fan, because that's exactly where I can see from the user, the picture as well, the profile picture as well. So great name. Why don't we play Reset right centre back? He's defensively strong, he's physical, and he doesn't need to run as much as fullback or midfield. We can invert Cucurella, who brings more energy in the middle of the park. False. Reece as a right centre back has obviously been tried. I don't know, when you say right centre back, do you mean in a back three, or in the current system really a back two, where then you add either one of the fullbacks comes into the free back? Because if you look at Chelsea's build-up under Enzo Maresca, it kind of at times feels like a free back system, and you have players pushing up, which is understandable. Reece at right centre back has always been talked about because of that defensive quality. We saw, I believe he played right centre-back to an insanely high level, actually, at the Bernabeu against Vinicius Jr. in the Champions League. That was that really heartbreaking one. But I remember coming out of that game, us talking about, that was when Ruben, yeah, it absolutely was. Ruben was playing at right wing back, and he done really well there. And it was one of those Tuchel kind of tactical masterclasses. Yeah, we didn't win it, but in terms of like putting out a performance and not having maybe all of your first choice players because of injury, it was a wonderful game. And Reece does have those attributes. I think my frustration with that is that Reece as an attack, the one thing that I've just always felt very passionate about Ree James is I want to use him as a weapon to hurt the opposition rather than as a defensive measurement against the opposition. You know, I think Reece is best when he's in the final third or he's outside the box and he's got the ball at his feet, as we saw against Manchester United, and he's able to use that right foot of his either to cross a ball, either to take a shot at goal. That is where I want Ree James. I want him impacting creatively. It's not like you can't have a balance, but at right back, you think you can have that balance. At wing back, you think you can have that balance. Even in central midfield, you'd hope you could have that balance. I think at right centre back, what you end up getting into is a situation where more often than not, he won't be getting into the right areas. He'll be far too central. He'll be far too deep to impact the game. So I think at times I could sort of understand it in that era for Thomas Tuchel when needs must, and it worked, especially one-on-one against really elite attackers like Vinicius Jr., which I think Reece really profited off of and showed his strength. But for the long term, personally, not for me. I think I'd be prioritising Trev there. I'd be prioritising the development of Josh Achimpong or a player Chelsea sign in the summer rather than having Reece in that position. So these two comments are both about Jadon Sancho. Obviously, pre-Man United, we spoke to Scott Saunders from a Man United perspective, and we spoke about Sancho. So obviously that was part of the big discussion. Should Chelsea keep Sancho? Should he be moved on? That'll become clear very soon because, we're only 2 games left of this season. So the PC Toolbox says here, if Chelsea let Sancho go and he moves to a club that plays with a proper fullback behind him, he will resume his promising career. At Chelsea, his role is impossible when he's always given 2 players to beat in limited space. Maresca, with his limited tactics and now out-of-date style, and missing out on the strengths of many of his players. What good manager would turn up at Newcastle with one of the best midfields in the Premier League and play a very good midfield player playing at right back when he had the England right back on the bench and only having 2 players in midfield? Maresca is out of his depth and he is making Sancho looks like a worse player than he actually is. But here Tom Driscoll disagrees and says, I don't think it's worth keeping Sancho. He hasn't moved the needle for us much this season, although he has done okay. And we have had a number of players coming in who will be competing for the same position and need game time. I'm much more in agreement with Tom there. However, I do think in terms of... it has been a frustration of mine with our use of fullbacks. It has been all season. I really am not the biggest fan of the inverted fullback. I would like to see it adapted. I would like to see it changed, because I don't think it's getting the best out of our players. I look at Malo Gusto and I think the way he's regressed this season compared to what he was under Pochettino, I think that's a real disappointment. I think there is a real player there with Malo Gusto as a fullback, and I don't know why we have kind of undermined that this season. I really hope that Gusto gets a 3rd season, and I'd like to see that altered. It's not that you can't invert players that it suits Marc Cucurella to be an inverted fullback, because naturally I think he just works a lot better there. It seems to suit his game, and it's been elevated this season. He gets into really good positions and he's been impactful for Chelsea. Broader conversation, do you want Cucurella always popping up in those positions compared to someone else? That's a separate conversation. In terms of Sancho and our fullbacks kind of not really helping out our wingers, and our wingers kind of always seemingly being outnumbered at times, especially against deeper defences, I think that has been a problem. So I'm not saying that Sancho maybe hasn't been helped by that, but I kind of think that what I've seen from Jadon Sancho still, even with those limitations, gets himself into good positions. And I think for the positions he gets himself into and doesn't take enough shots, doesn't take full advantage of those opportunities, I think that's why a lot of people are kind of looking at it as, is it the end of the world if he moves on? Especially when you've got Esteval Willian coming in, which of course is a big player who I'm sure is going to take up a lot of the headlines and conversation and discussion. And although we expect he'll be on the right, as could maybe Kendry Páez be on the right, that's another player who could play in central midfield as well, as we were just speaking about Santos. Noni's development this season at left wing, for me, I'd rather persist with Noni at left wing than Sancho. I'd rather persist with Tyreek George in Chelsea's kind of wide options and whoever Chelsea could sign as an upgrade to Jadon Sancho. I think although some people have kind of argued that, well, we keep Sancho and if it doesn't work out, you could sell him on. I'm not entirely sure. I think that the 5 million penalty fee is at the end of the world. And the other thing I would point out as well is that, sure, for the Conference League, for competitions that Chelsea don't have that high stakes kind of value in, or kind of where they're really going to be challenged, players like Sancho can be quite valuable. The problem is, and again, this is not a problem that means that I don't want to be in the Champions League, but if you're in the Champions League and you're in a high caliber of opposition, you're facing them on a regular basis. Hopefully, Chelsea are competing at a high level in the Premier League next season. I just think it's incumbent that Chelsea have a high caliber of player, especially in our depth positions. And Sancho, I think, is what he is. And I think it's a combination, as we spoke about with Scott last week, of the league not being right for him, himself maybe, having these nice moments, but then never quite kind of cementing himself as a great player. It feels like he goes through tides during the season, and it feels like times he drifts through games too much for me. So I think that is a problem, and why I have to say I'm not going to lose too much sleep if he moves on in the summer, as I think maybe we might put a poll out on it. You can give me your thoughts. I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world if Sancho doesn't remain at Chelsea. I think what you have to do then is go out in the market and sign someone better, which hopefully is going to be the thing that Chelsea achieve and accomplish this summer. Mujiasma9304 here says, after getting the last trophy to fill our trophy spaces horizontally, then we may sort our goalkeeping personnel by letting Sanchez go. Then we bring in Diogo Costa of Porto, maybe Martinez of Aston Villa with Petrovic centre-back. All we want is him at Crystal Palace. I assume you mean Mark Gurhey. Keep or sell Chalobah. Let Gusto be loaned to either Liverpool or Strasbourg. Give us Leao at left wing, then allow Sancho. We can keep Leao and George. Loan Felix to Strasbourg. He can shine over there. We can continue and see with Jackson. Allow either Noni or Neto to leave as Esteban is coming, and we see how they can alternate positions on the right side. Also allow Guiu to take over in Nkunku. Let's sell him. Disasi also. And be a little strong again. I wish that you would read this, as I have. You reply in the video, otherwise thanks. So yeah, I have responded to it. I don't agree with all that, especially as we get further up the pitch. I don't agree with letting Noni leave. I think that would be weakening Chelsea, especially for where I think Noni Madueke would go. I think if you sell Noni Madueke, he's likely going to be going to someone like Newcastle, Aston Villa. He's going to be going to a team where I think he could produce. And if you're not going a level above where Chelsea currently are, you're going to be competing with them for Champions League football. So I don't think that's a positive. I think in the case of the goalkeeper, we spoke about this yesterday with Martinez. I've heard again Chelsea looking at goalkeepers, young goalkeepers from Brazil, which kind of feels like the Strasbourg kind of pipeline for me. And, he's not really the dominant goalkeeper that we need. Mark Gurhey, of course, has now helped Crystal Palace win an FA Cup. I'd be very happy to sign Mark Gurhey. I think I've consistently said this, that I think, Mark Gurhey was a player. You can find the track record. I have it. I have the receipts that I was not happy when we let Mark Gurhey go in the summer of 2021 when we just won the Champions League. And of course, back then, Mark Gurhey was not the player he is today. He was a much younger player. He hadn't even had senior Premier League football, but I felt he was a high potential defender. And I think I even said in that show many years ago now, it feels like a very long time ago, in my old classic Son of Chelsea studio, I said that one day we'll probably be trying to re-sign him. And that's where kind of we are. I think he's Premier League quality. I think he's very mature. I think he's grown and become not only just a player that on a regular basis has, I think, been very good for Crystal Palace, but, even just seeing what he did at the Euros with England. I think many people came out of the Euros thinking that's one of England's best players. And yeah, I think he's got the right mentality. The only issue you've got, obviously, with Gurhey is where he plays in defence, because really he has played predominantly on the left side of defence. And Levi Colwill has felt like the big long-term option. Unless you move to a back three system, which I'm not entirely against. I know some people would love to see Chelsea return to a proper back three system. I know in possession we play a back three, but I mean, from the off, you're playing that back three system. and who else it could benefit in the current team. Maybe you've got an issue there, which is maybe why in the market Chelsea would be looking for a right-sided defender. But, could Guehi play that right-sided role? Is it, radically different to what he does? Could he adapt to play that role? Because I think Levi is very much cementing his place on the left side. I think you do keep Trev Chalobah. I still firmly believe that as utility player, as someone who I think will come in and be valuable to you across the course of the season. He's done that multiple times. In terms of Gusto, I don't agree about, loaning and selling him. I'd like to keep him. But, you do then have a situation where you have like 3 centre-backs on the books, don't you? 3 right-backs, on the books, where you'd have Malo Gusto, Josh Achimpong, and Ree James. But in the case of both Reece and Josh, Josh is can play centre back, Reece can play central midfield. So it's not like you're pigeonholing yourself where those players can't play together in the same 11. I think they might have even done it for Chelsea this season. And Malo Gusto is kind of your more traditional right back. He's kind of your classic right back. I think he just is a right back. I think trying to use him as anything else, I think is a bit of a waste of time. So yeah, that's sort of the question. I agree with you in terms of like Disasi and a lot of the players. We're going to be doing a deep dive on squad and kind of squad depth and letting a load of these players go. There's a lot of big decisions that Chelsea have to make, and I think that's what makes this summer not exactly simple, although I don't think that this summer in terms of incoming should be mass change in my opinion. Lastly here, just it was one that made me chuckle from Just Incredible. Dan's even sporting Maresca's wrist beads now. I do have, I know he's got, I don't think he's got as many as mine. I mean, unfortunately, I am amassing a lot of wristbands, bracelets at this point on my left arm that I fear they're going to come up to my elbow by this time next year. But yeah, it's not Maresca inspired, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you think about Enter Maresca. But yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting comment. I know one of them looks quite similar here. A lot of them hold a lot of value. So yeah, whether Maresca continues with that trend or not, I don't mind being compared to him, but I found the comment quite funny. So that is it, responding to your comments and thoughts today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on the podcast, please do subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you watch this on YouTube and you don't know there's a pod, and I've heard it actually the other way around, that people listen to the pod and don't know there's a YouTube channel. There is a YouTube channel. That's where Son of Chelsea originated. So if you want to see what I'm saying, and sometimes we're putting up visuals and stuff on some of the news, you can go and check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe to all of the good places, and please share the show around with friends. It really helps get the show to more people. I will have a Substack piece going out pretty soon before the Nottingham Forest game. Obviously, I think now we'll start to look ahead to news, but obviously the weekend is huge. It just can't be any bigger in terms of Chelsea's season. And the question I'll leave you with: is Sunday's game the biggest Chelsea or most important Chelsea game since that Liverpool Champions League decider in May of 2003? Obviously, that was such a huge game in Chelsea's history in terms of it preceding, Roman Abramovich coming in. But I've heard that said a few times, and I have to say, I don't really disagree with it. And I've written a piece about it that will be going out soon. So I'll leave you with that. And follow across the socials at Son of Chelsea. Have a great rest of your day, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you again very soon. All the best.